Hello, friends, and welcome to Wednesday night Bible study for the Emmanuel Baptist Church family. I'm glad that you would join me tonight. We are going to pick back up our study of 1 Thessalonians, the hopeful life. And I've been looking forward to this lesson. I've had it prepared for several weeks, and then we were on break, and that trip got extended. And tonight I necessarily need to be brief. I'm recording this on Monday. I have a couple of full days ahead, and we're coming off a great weekend of ministry, and I'm just thankful for the brunch on Saturday, welcoming new folks to our church. Sunday morning, the services just full of life and joy and hopefulness. And then Sunday night, our night of worship. If you didn't get to be a part of that, it's archived. You can look it up and enjoy it. But turn with me for a few moments to 1 Thessalonians 3. We left off really two thoughts into a four-thought progression called Hope Comes Back to Life. And so we'll call this part 2 of Hope Comes Back to Life, how God uses a church family to sustain hope. And this is really, I feel this personally in so many ways because I see so many parallels between my story at Emmanuel and with our church family that I see the Apostle Paul experienced with the church family at Thessalonica and the church family at Corinth and what God was doing in his life at this time. So we're going to read verses 1 through 10. I'll do a quick review and then unfold another thought for tonight. Wherefore, when we could no longer forbear, this is talking about the suffering he was experiencing at Thessalonica and Berea and that region as the Judaizers were persecuting and threatening him. We thought it good to be left at Athens alone. If you remember in Acts 18 or 17, he was placed on a ship and they sent him away for his own safety. So he ended up in Athens alone. Verse 2, and sent Timotheus our brother and minister of God and our fellow helper in the gospel of Christ to establish you and comfort you concerning your faith. So Paul was really passionate for the believers, for their flourishing, for their health, for their faith. And I resonate with that. I feel very passionate for your spiritual health and our church's spiritual health. And that's what the call to true spiritual leadership is. I've seen over the years many situations of leaders that use their place of leadership for self-serving ends or motives. But Paul was passionate for their well-being. So he said, I'm going to send Timothy, his co-laborer, his pastor in training, to establish you, to comfort you concerning your faith. He wanted them to be strong and enduring and durable and comforted. He wanted them to be uplifted and strengthened and motivated, inspired to press on, to hold on. That no man should be moved by these afflictions, for yourselves know that we are appointed thereunto. Verse 3 is, boy, that's a powerful verse. He's writing this letter to a strong church, a thriving church, a healthy church, and he just is gushing with praise for them and with affirmation of them. And so the sense of the whole letter is he wants them to be strong in hope. That's why we call this the hopeful life, because we live in a hopeless day. We live in a world that's without hope, but we can live hopeful lives. And so it was with the church at Thessalonica. And he said, these afflictions that have come upon me and upon you and that come upon all the servants of God, they shouldn't move us. We should realize that we are appointed thereunto. And that's where we left off last time, that our hardships are redeemed. They're appointed. We are appointed to them. They're appointed to us, and they are assignments in the grace of God, in the story that God is writing in and through our lives as we participate in what he's doing in time and space. Even our suffering or our hardship is appointed and has a purpose. For verily, when we were with you, we told you before that we should suffer tribulation, even as it came to pass, and you know. Okay. For this cause, when I could no longer forbear, I sent to know your faith, lest by some means the tempter have tempted you, and our labor be in vain. Now when Timotheus came from you unto us, and brought us good tidings of your faith and charity, that ye have good remembrance of us always, desiring greatly to see us, as we also to see you. Therefore, brethren, we were comforted over you in all our affliction and distress by your faith. For now we live, if ye stand fast in the Lord. For what thanks can we render to God again for you, for all the joy wherewith we joy, for your sakes, before our God, night and day, praying exceedingly, that we might see your face, and might perfect that which is lacking in your faith. I just love these 10 verses. So, excuse me. We said, first of all, this is a couple weeks ago, hope flows as we serve with gospel teams. So Paul could not be everywhere, so he chose where he felt God most wanted him to be. And at this point, verse 1, he's in Athens alone. He's not where he wants to be. He's not where he wishes he could be. And so he sends Timothy. He's got a team. And Paul thrived in his teams. He loved his team, and he was grateful to be able to serve with others. And so it is in all of our lives. We said that solitude is healthy, but isolation is toxic. We have been placed into the body to do life together, to serve together, to grow together, to gather together, to congregate, to worship, to encourage one another. And I'm so glad that COVID is on the decline and that more and more of our church family are gathering, and we are pressing forward. As of the middle of March, all restrictions are lifted in terms of capacities off of churches in Connecticut. And so we are pressing forward. We are moving back into a fully operational mode, and we're just excited about the future. So we want to reconvene our teams. Maybe that's one of the great takeaways from thought number 1, is that we need teams to reconvene and bless one another and bless the body. Number 2, hope grows as we redeem hardship. Now, this is where we left off, about not being moved because we have been appointed thereunto. Look at verse 4. For verily, certainly, truly, when we were with you, we told you before that we should suffer tribulation, even as it came to pass, and you know. So we knew it was coming. We expected it to come. We respond to it right. We see it as an appointment or an assignment of God, and suffering should be no surprise. We live in a Christian culture that is surprised too much by suffering or hardship. The American dream tells us to avoid hardship. Asceticism says, no, create hardship, suffer, because that makes you spiritual. And neither one are balanced biblical positions. But the right view of suffering and hardship expects it, may not want it, but expects it, and then leans into it with boldness, courage, with dependence on Christ, that this is his assignment for me in this moment. This is his stewardship, and he's going to do great things through this hardship. Let's move on to the third thought, and I think we will probably land it here for tonight. Hope resurges. So hope flowed on gospel teams, Paul with his co-laborers. Hope grows as we redeem hardship, and we know that God is going to work through our hardship. But thirdly, hope resurges. It comes back to life through communicated assurance. Communicated assurance. Look at verse 5. And this would tie into the 5 love languages, words of affirmation. Maybe Paul's love language was words of affirmation. Who knows? Verse 5. For this cause, when I could no longer forbear, I sent to know your faith. So Paul is away from those he loves, wants to serve with them, but can't. And he can no longer forbear. He can no longer hold up. He can no longer tolerate not knowing. He is in agony. Psychological, spiritual, emotional. It's impacting him. He's alone. He's in decline. This speaks so much to our own spiritual, emotional health, that first century followers of Jesus struggled with these things and knew that being alone wasn't healthy. and knew that you come to a moment where you can't forbear, you can't continue, and you reckon with that. So Paul said, I can't continue in this place. I need to know. So he said, I sent to know your faith, lest by some means the tempter have tempted you, and our labor be in vain. So Paul is writing, and he says, I was worried for you. I was considering you. I was thinking of you, and I wondered. I began to wonder and imagine, did Satan get the best of you? Did you fall away? Did you get discouraged? Boy, do I identify with that in regards to right now in our church life. I'm worried about those that are not returning to church. Now, on one hand, I know that many folks have really good reason not to return, and I understand that, and I support that. But the fear of any shepherd that loves people is, what about those that should be returning but are not? Are they discouraged? Are they falling away? Are they losing hope? Are they falling prey to sin and bad decisions? Where are they? And can we help recover them? Can we help encourage them back into the gathering? And you know, it's a lose-lose proposition, because if we don't reach out in love, then we don't love. But if we do reach out in love, we risk being misunderstood as legalist, or as somehow, our spirit not being right in it. But the fact is, Paul worried about whether Satan was getting the advantage in the lives of new believers, and I feel that as well. And so he said, I need to know. I sent to know. I sent Timothy to find out, how are you doing, and how's your faith? What's the quality of your faith, and are you standing strong, lest our labor be in vain? Paul said, I didn't want to think. I couldn't bear the idea that what God started in you was not continuing. But look what happens in verse 6. But now when Timotheus came from you unto us. Now remember, he's at Corinth, and he's waiting for the news. When Timothy came from you unto us, and brought us good tidings of your faith and charity. So Timothy finally arrives in Corinth. It's a beautiful story. And as he arrives, he cheers the Apostle Paul. How? Faith and charity. Faith is their labor of love, their patience of hope, their work of faith that we read about in chapter 1, that they were thriving as a church. And their charity would have been their expression of love, their generosity. They likely sent an offering through Timothy to the Apostle Paul, knowing he would be running low on resources, knowing he would be in need, and really wanting to fund his gospel ministry wherever he was. And this is timely. God's Spirit led this because Paul was in Corinth without resources and had really essentially gotten out of full-time ministry to take a secular job so he could sustain himself. And then he was preaching only on the Sabbath day in the synagogues. But when Timothy comes, the way it's described in Acts is Paul was pressed in his spirit, which is a sense of reviving and renewing and re-energizing. And he's re-resourced. So he now has the wherewithal to minister 6 days, 7 days a week. He's teaching every day in Corinth, which was exactly God's plan, because there were many people that were going to become believers in Corinth. And the church at Thessalonica, because of their offering and their steadfastness, sent through Timothy the good news of their love and their charity. Paul was re-energized to do the work that God wanted done in Corinth. So he says, Timothy brought good tidings of your faith and charity, and that ye have good remembrance of us always, desiring greatly to see us, as we also to see you. Isn't it good to know? I want you to capture the communication to and from. And I resonate with this because pastoral ministry is often one way. There are so many people in our church family that have received communication from us, but have in no way responded. It's just a one-way conversation. Maybe not so many. Maybe it's a handful. The vast majority of our church family are communicative. They're responsive, which is healthy. Why? Because you are served by a pastoral team and a deacon team that are not hirelings. We care. And we reach out, we write, we call, we teach online, whatever. and hearing from you, not simply affirmation. We're not just looking for a pat on the back, but hearing that you are okay is greatly, greatly encouraging to us and motivating. It gives us comfort. It lets us know that God is sustaining you. And so Paul was really rejoicing. I mean, elated, overflowing, explosive joy that they had good remembrance of him and that they couldn't wait to see him and that they were looking forward to seeing him. It reminds me, all I can think of, I got a text message recently, a day or two ago, from a lady that is unable to be in church right now, but she said, can't wait to come back, can't wait to see you very soon. That was so assuring and so comforting to hear. Look at verse 7. Therefore, brethren, we were comforted. And I would simply just insert here, and I'm not asking you for anything, I just want you to see it. A lot of times we get the idea that there's, the church staff and the church family, and that these, that it's a one-way flow. But Paul is expressing to the church at Thessalonica, I need to hear from you as much as you need to hear from me. And he was comforted over their communication. And that's really powerful. In many ways, it helped sustain him. It helped keep him in the ministry. I think I'm still in the ministry today because of the prayers of God's people and the encouragement, the comfort, the consolation. We sat at lunch on Sunday with a new family in our church, and they're just a wonderful young couple, and hearing their story was so encouraging to Dana and I. And for a couple hours, we just sat and enjoyed conversation. And at the end of that conversation, they together said, now, we have one question, and that question is, how can we encourage you? And what they said is, Pastor, we feel the church and the pastoral staff, they're so encouraging to us, and so how can we be a blessing in return? And I said, just the fact that you would ask that is an incredible encouragement. But I would just say, what I said to them is, we need friends just like anybody else does. And I said, so many times people feel weird around the pastor, or they put him on some kind of weird pedestal, or they imagine that he's somehow evaluating or measuring them in some way, so they feel awkward, or they put on a disingenuous facade. Oh, hey, pastor, and they get plastic. And I said, what we need is just genuine friends. We are just people who love Jesus and love our church family, and we just long to come down off the platform and off the pedestal and just have normal human relationships where we can laugh and cry together and grow together and be not treated weird or different because I'm the pastor or Dana's the pastor's wife. It was a really comforting conversation and a comforting question. And Paul was comforted over you in all our affliction and distress by your faith. So Paul was concerned about the state of their faith, not merely their behavior, but the state of their heart. Timothy arrived with good news. Their faith is intact. Their charity and their generosity is expressed. And Paul is replenished because of this news. Was this selfish? Of course not. Paul was needy just like anybody else. And he had a good remembrance. Paul wasn't simply needing their affirmation. He wanted to be assured that his labor and that the truth was living strong in their lives. And that was a healthy thing. And he didn't just want to hear from them, he longed to be with them. God's servant in Corinth was assured and comforted and strengthened by the communication that flowed between him and believers at Thessalonica. So I'm going to pause here. Hope flows on gospel teams as we encourage one another. Hope grows as we enter hardship with a wide-eyed awareness that this is an appointment, this is a stewardship, God's going to do something good. Hope resurges through that mutual communicated assurance. We in the church body, everybody, we need mutual comfort. We need to mutually encourage and communicate one with another. We need to bless one another. And I pray you will do that, because your blessing, your assurance may just keep someone's heart afloat. It may cause hope to resurge, and that's a good thing. So these are 3 of the 4 ways that hope stays alive, and we will study the 4th, verses 8 through 10, in our next study. So thank you for joining me for this Wednesday night. Have a great night, and I hope to see you either through Enough for Today later this week or on Sunday in church.